Well, good night, or good evening, everyone, and I should be saying good night. It's been a very long day and a long week. But good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Year 12 Parent Information Evening. We do have an information evening at the start of each year. However, at the commencement of the HSC program, which is in the term 4 of the Year 11 year, I think it is helpful for parents to be involved in the conversation that is being had at school with your girls. So today the girls spent some time with Kate Clinch, and then I will be speaking to them in pastoral care next week. And our approach to the HSC at PLC Armidale is that it is very much a marathon event, and so we actually need to have the marathon analogy very firmly fixed in our minds and realise that we don't run a marathon at the same pace and intensity for the entire duration, and that there are different parts of the marathon. There are different scenery around, there's different pressure points. There's always a Heartbreak Hill, and usually at Heartbreak Hill, which is around the time of the trials, term 3 next year, is when I then interview and meet with the girls one-on-one and talk to them about the marathon journey to that point, and then we discuss the sprint phase and how the approach that's needed to finish and to finish well. So what we're going to do this evening is really just go through some of the approach we take to supporting our Year 12 students. It is an absolute privilege to be in a school where this morning I was handing out awards to our little 4-year-olds in pre-K. Hearing reports of the in-house concert last evening that unfortunately I wasn't able to be at, having come back from Sydney with some students, and hearing of the little girls looking at the big girls and following their lead in the in-house concert, and then being here this evening speaking to the parents of our Year 12 students, that the staff collectively invest so much time and energy into caring for them and knowing them individually. So to have you here this evening is a real privilege. This is just what we're hoping to cover in the hour that we have set aside to spend together with you this evening. Introduction to some key people, and they really are the school-based pitch crew and support crew for your girls. We treasure the opportunity of partnering with parents, and I am sharing the joy and the pain with you, being a Year 12 parent myself. My youngest child has just started the Year 12 program, so I'll be walking exactly the same road. I'm just doing it via distance. He's at boarding school in Sydney. So for our border families that are joining us via Zoom, I'll be sharing your experience as well. But a number of our staff enjoy working with our Year 12 girls, but also the privilege of working with families too. We'll look at an overview of Stage 6, the pastoral care support programs that are in place, and then I'll take us through another approach at looking at the HSC and the ATAR, which may be very familiar to some of you, but it might be new to others. And there's often a lot of confusion between the HSC and the ATAR and how that all works, which hopefully we will clarify in a series of conversations and iterative messages over the next year. We'll look at the career support available, and then there's an opportunity for questions and answers at the end of this evening as well. So just introducing you to the key people that will work with your girls throughout Stage 6. For those, and I think I know everyone in the room, but Nicola Taylor is college principal, and it is a real privilege to work with your daughters. I'm especially enjoying my connections with our newly elected leaders and prefects, and they are a great group of girls that are really setting the tone well for the college. Our head of senior school, Mr. Clendenning, Mitchell Clendenning, will speak in a moment. Our Director of Studies, Mrs. Kate Clinch, is a seasoned veteran of supporting Year 12 students, and Kate will take quite an active role in the pastoral care of the girls as well. Head of Humanities, Julie Flanagan, is here this evening. Thank you, Julie, for being here. And our Head of the STEAM faculty, Jonathan Schumack, here as well to support and answer any questions you might have. Miss Amy Chu is our careers support person for our Stage 6 students, And the approach that we take to careers is to provide information to the girls and to make that information accessible as it comes to us. And Amy is exceptionally good at administering the flow of information. There is a website that the girls have access to that is a school-based website, and it has a lot of information there about everything from gap year to scholarships, to Job Jump, which is a vocational guidance platform, as well as the Moresby career profiling that has been done. Amy also has involved visiting speakers from a range of universities and colleges to come and speak to the girls in their final year at school to broaden their horizons about opportunities or courses that they may not know. Amy also administers our Pathways program. She's also a part-time college nurse, and she also does academic administration. So Amy is our go-to person for all of our NESA data entry as well, and very much involved in supporting Stage 6. On our pastoral care team for Year 12, we have Kate Fitchler, who's also here this evening. Thanks, Kate, for being here. Mrs. Jo Weisel, who is unable to be here, and Kate, as I mentioned. And then our college psychologist, Penny Kempton, is there. Penny's role is not to case manage individual students at school, but if we see girls that just are not travelling well, Penny might check in with them, and if we feel that they would benefit from just some extra support, which we really call life coaching by the time it gets to Year 12, then we will, Penny would be in touch with you as parents and suggest that that could be a very helpful thing. Because as much as we put all of these protective factors and support and care around the girls, as much as we map out and make things quite clear for them to help reduce the anxiety of uncertainty, there are still points where the HSC year by very definition is stressful, and it doesn't help when there's media reports or horror stories from other schools. That can just exacerbate any underlying uncertainty a girl may have. And then it's the natural transition. I'm actually finishing school. I've been at school for 13 or 14 years, and facing the prospect of adult responsibility in the real world can all be quite unsettling, and for different girls it's at different points, so that's why there is a team approach very much at PLC. I'd now like to hand over to Kate, who's only going to be with us for a very short time this evening, because Kate is also on her dinner break from HSC marking of the ancient history paper. So Kate, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. As Nicholas said, I'm Kate Clinch, and I've had the privilege of working with Year 12 students here at PLC for a number of years now, and I am excited to be working with this new group of Year 12 2023. So Term 4 is the start of this Year 12 journey, and it's a journey that finishes next year in Term 4. Our final HSC students sit their final HSC exam tomorrow afternoon. So this date, 12 months' time, is a really big one for our girls. The girls have commented already that they have noticed that starting Year 12 work has been a bit of a shift for some of them. They've noticed the increase in workload and the expectations and this new level of personal responsibility that comes with being in Year 12. Formal assessment tasks start this term, along with our key PLC traditions of Activities Week and Guild Drama. So our Year 12 students remain in classes during Activities Week. I let them know about that today. Some of them were just a little bit disappointed about that. And then they have consolidated sessions for each of their classes during that week before taking the lead with Guild Drama each afternoon. So Term 4 is a really busy and important term for Year 12, not just starting the HSC, but kind of learning how to be HSC students. And one of those key milestones, the Year 12 block. Again, a very exciting part of being in Year 12 at PLC. So it's a key milestone. It's a step towards independence, and it's the next stage in their learning journey. And as always, they're very keen for this milestone to occur and to get access to the Year 12 block. So we're going to be hopefully moving the girls into the Year 12 block around the end of week 6, once our current Year 12 students have moved out completely and we've freshened the place up to welcome in our new Year 12 group. So if you haven't been over to the Year 12 block in recent times, it's quite an important space for our Year 12 girls. There are study rooms upstairs, and each room has 3 or 4 individual study desks inside, some bookshelves and a heater for the cooler months. Upstairs in the Year 12 block is a quiet study space, and students usually find this to be an effective place to study during the school day. Some students do find they work much better in the library though, and that's something that we encourage them to do if that works better for them. The common room is also one of those key privileges that the girls are very keen to access. They finally have their own fridge, their own sandwich toaster, a kettle, and supplies to make tea and other hot drinks. The common room is a place for them to debrief and to socialise, whereas upstairs is their place to actually study. So they get to spend their lunchtimes and recess in the common room if they would like to. Students are also responsible for keeping that space clean and tidy, which, as you can imagine, can sometimes be a challenge. The amount of mouldy things left in a fridge at the end of a term, not something you probably want to imagine at this point, but it is a key milestone for the girls moving into the Year 12 block, and it does usually indicate this shift in mindset where they grow and hopefully move into this new responsibility of being a Year 12 student. So today when I met with them, I issued them with a digital copy of the HSC handbook for 2022-23, and that contains all of the assessment policies and procedures for the HSC year. It's published for them on their Pastoral Care Canvas page, and they have all downloaded a copy from there today. They also have a hard copy of the overall assessment schedule for each of their subjects, so they have annotated that today so that they know which assessment tasks they have coming up this term and across the rest of their HSC year. They've also all received a copy of the NESA rules and procedures for 2023 and have all read through that and then signed a declaration to show that they've understood what's in that one. So we have got two things that work in conjunction there. We've got our PLC policies and procedures and our NESA rules and procedures as well. All of this is with your daughters, and I would encourage you to talk to them about these things. So if you have questions, please direct your questions to me in the first instance, or to Mr. Mitchell Glendinning as well, or to our heads of faculty, to Julie or to Jono. So I've put a little bullet point up there about attendance. It's an important one at this point. So students are expected to attend school each day and to attend each timetabled class. So this is a key part of the student demonstrating diligence and sustained effort in their HSC courses, which is a really key part of being in Year 12. Though, of course, things always happen, so if your daughter is unwell, please make sure that you notify the school. This is incredibly important in our HSC year because we are bound by those rules from NESA for HSC. So the procedures for what to do for missing assessment tasks due to illness are all outlined in that HSC handbook. We also need to consider that applications for leave need to be made in advance and they need to be approved as well. So requests for leave will be checked against the assessment schedules, and leave may not be granted if the request clashes with an assessment task. So advance notice of any kind of leave will really help in this process to make sure it's possible. The actual exams themselves, we have two key sets of exams. We have the trial exams and then the HSC. We also run a full set of non-assessable exams for the girls in term 1, purely as practice, as a time for them to reflect on what they've learned so far and to have a chance to practice those exam skills under exam conditions. So they're not ones that appear in the assessment schedule, but they're there as a chance for our girls to consolidate their learning and to have real experience of what it's like to sit in the exam room. So the trial exams are held here at PLC over a 2-week period in term 3, so they'll be in week 4 and 5 of term 3 next year. And the actual HSC exams commence on Wednesday, the 11th of October in 2023, which will be week 1 of term 4. The girls have all of these key dates now written down in their diaries, so they know exactly what they're aiming for. In terms of study skills, we have this as an ongoing program. We cover study skills in careers, and I have a careers session with the girls once a fortnight where we kind of look at the big picture around study skills. How do we plan our time? How do we study effectively? And these things also come up in pastoral care throughout the year in Year 12. It's an ongoing program, and it's one that we think is vital to support our students and to give them a good chance of success in their HSC year. And then we have Guild Drama and Activities Week. This looms large in the minds of our Year 12 students. It can be stressful as they step up and take the lead in this really exciting event. This is a completely student-led event, and the students are the ones that actually write the scripts, select the music, choreograph the dancers, and actually direct Guild Drama. So as teachers, our aim is always to keep the students calm and working well as a team, and to allow them to develop these really important skills in leadership within their guilds. It's a wonderful way to end a year and to showcase what our students can do. But do be prepared for some stressed Year 12 students. They do work incredibly well, and it is incredibly important, but it can be a time of slightly heightened emotion for some of our girls. So as always, please do get in touch with me if you have any questions or any concerns. And at this point, I probably should go back to marking and hand over to Mitchell Clendening for the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Yes, I'm Mitchell. I think I've met most of you before, but please come and chat to me afterwards if you hadn't had the chance to speak with me yet. First of all, I thought I'd go through some of the things Kate actually spoke to the girls about this morning, so that we're on the same page and you're aware of the messaging we're giving them, and that can be reinforced at home. And I guess the first thing that we like to really reinforce is that it's their time to accept responsibility. And I think it becomes that time in their life that we can do everything we can for them and set them up for success and give them all the support that we can. But it comes to a time that they need to own it and choose what they want this final year to be for them. And we have great hopes for this year group. I was speaking to one of the parents outside earlier that each year group is actually different in terms of its own culture and the individuals that are thrown together for this final year of school. And some find those great partnerships and friendships, others find there's difficulties along the way. But this is a real year group that have taken things seriously, and we saw lots of great qualities in them, especially as they stepped into Year 11 last year, that this is a cohort that can really do well, and we're with them 100% of the way. A big part of that, and that's the second point, is organisation. Some of your daughters are naturally good at that. Some of your daughters is lower down on their strengths list. And so we can help them with that and put that in place as well, and just having that touching base with them. And that's partly what happens in pastoral care when I get to that slide is, this is what's happening this week. These are the assessments. Remember, you've got that. But if they haven't got a good organisational strategy at home in terms of their diary or a whiteboard where they've got key dates up, now's the time to invest in those things and to keep them going, and prioritising too. Just like adults, we can put off the things that we know we should do first. And so having that occasional conversation, what's the number one thing you have to do today, and making sure you do it, can just relieve a lot of stress. And Mrs. Clinch does a great activity with the girls about Eat That Frog, and the idea is that choose the number one thing that you have to do, and you do it first for the day, and the rest of your day seems to go a lot better once you've eaten that frog, that thing that you don't want to eat, but you should eat it first. The use of study periods is really important as well. It's a real opportunity that can be wasted if it's not planned for. Things don't just happen without a good plan in using those study periods. And something that we're doing a bit differently this time is allocating some of those periods deliberately in the library as well as the Year 12 block to mix it up a little bit, particularly if girls are dropping down to, say, 10 units. We want to make sure that they're using their time really wisely, and sometimes giving some variety in the space that they're using to study can help with that. Though we still want them to be fully part of college life, Year 12 is not just all about study, and the girls that involve themselves still in school life also thrive in their academic life as well. Goal setting was another thing that was covered this morning with the girls in setting not only their short-term goals, but also medium and long-term goals and tracking them along the way. And that's a key responsibility of the pastoral care staff, is to look at the goals. Are they specific enough? Are they SMART goals? Are they measurable? Are they attainable? Are we tracking them? And something that, this will be my 20th year taking a Year 12 class through. Every year I see those students that proactively approach me and seek feedback, and the girls that don't. And we do try to reach out, and if your daughter is not one that is likely to do that, sometimes just even an email from a student saying, I really need just a bit of help with this, just goes a long way, because sometimes you can feel as a teacher that everybody gets it and everyone's on the same page, and they might be a bit quiet in speaking up in class. It's just that relationship with the teacher is such a fundamental principle of how well they do in the subject, and it needs to move on whether they like the teacher to how well they can work with them, and that's just a mature mindset that we want to keep instilling in our students to do that, because it doesn't just happen. So that's one of my number one tips. Obviously, as the Year 12, they do set the standard with uniform as well. So if you can please help us with that, because it also just it sets a high bar of expectation too of themselves, that we maintain those standards. Maintaining a life balance, of course, but also group mentality, and when Mrs. Taylor talks a little bit later about how ATAR works and the cohort effect, working as a group is so important, that there's so many opportunities to encourage each other rather than becoming super and ultra competitive. I think it's really important that they see themselves as a group and they'll succeed as a group, and there's a lot of things we can do to achieve that, and cleaning the common room. Okay, you don't need to worry about that, we need to worry about that, and they need to worry about it. The outgoing Year 12 left it at a high standard, I can say. No offence to anyone who had a daughter the year before that, but we keep getting better and better, so I have high expectations of 2023. And communication with support networks is vital too. Don't hesitate or wait for things to become a real crisis. The earlier we can help in terms of support networks, the better the outcome is. So let me encourage you with that. In speaking with our school psychologist who was unable to be here tonight, these are some of the things that she saw as really important advice. So I'll get to that in a minute. But as Mrs. Clinch mentioned, partial care sessions continue from Monday to Thursday each week, and a lot of it is around organisation and academic matters, goal setting and tracking, but also mental health strategies at this time in their life. One of the key messages is that the HSC is not the be-all and end-all, and we'll cover a little bit of that when it comes to careers, that the pathways are so different than they were in the past, that your ATAR isn't your only opportunity, which will make or break you in terms of your career and access to university or whatever pathway that you want to take. Many girls getting early offers to university, and universities are much broader in terms of what they're looking for, and of course post-school options that are not university as well, and so they'll get lots of opportunities to access further education or careers, and I guess something that's quite linked to that is that focusing on a number doesn't always work. For some girls it does, I'll be honest, they'll write a number down next to a subject that they want to get on an assessment, and that will drive them, but for a lot of girls that's not something that internally will motivate them, and so I guess you know your daughter best, what does work for her, what drives her, but often it isn't a number, and to reduce it down to that in some way diminishes the purpose of education, and letting them choose their own goal rather than setting this is the number you need to get is really important as well. Balance, of course, sleep, study, sport and socialising, eating well, modelling self-care yourself. I mean, that's an interesting one that I'm cognizant of, that if I'm stressing out at home because of everything going on, that I'm showing this is how I manage that myself. I'm going to go for that walk. I'm going to eat healthily. I'm going to get enough sleep. As a parent, are you doing those things? Because they learn from that, and even verbalising it is quite good too, because it's showing it's important, and it leads to better outcomes for your daughter and as a family. Making space for them is something that is more applicable for some rather than others. Some like to be really close, some really like their space, and I suppose you might feel that even vary over Year 12. There'll be those times they really need you and want you, and other times they don't want you to talk to them at all, perhaps, right? And I think just expecting that is important. Family activities was something also. They're still really important. Just hearing them out, and when talking about options, being realistic. So when I was talking to Penny about that, she was saying some students whereby they had these high ambitions of, I want to go and study overseas, I want to go to this place or that, when it was never going to be a financial reality or not very likely, and being honest about what some of the options, without crushing dreams of course, but also having realistic conversations of what are the options really out there, what can be achieved. And the other thing that the girls have been told is not only reaching out for themselves, but if they see a friend that is struggling, to reach out on their behalf. And I've seen that happen a lot here and at other schools too. It's their friends often who bring it to the attention, sometimes of a parent of a friend, brings it to their attention about that their daughter is struggling. And we're the school's the last to hear from it, the parents the last to hear. It's the friends that actually know. And so they're the ones that can really be a good advocate for your daughter, or reaching out when they're concerned about a friend. So these are the messages that we've been giving them as they're beginning their HSC journey. I'm now going to hand over to Mrs. Taylor to talk more about how the HSC and ATAR works.
Thank you. Oh. Thanks, Mitchell. Just something that this is my 5th child doing their HSC, and a piece of very practical advice. Ask to see the assessment handbook for your daughter's subjects. Put it on the family calendar, because the family activities are important and doing things together are good, but if you don't know when your daughter's got her assessments due, it's very easy to either double book or overlook things, and that can create a pressure point. So if you actually do the parent thing and say, look, I just need to plan for the family, can you give me your dates? Put them on the family calendar. It does make life much smoother. The calendar will all have, or most of the assessments, in a week, because the actual day of when it will be submitted in will be determined by the timetable for 2023. But that's just a very small practical parent tip. Moving on now to have a look at where we're up to. So your students began the ROSA journey, which is the Record of School Achievement journey, in Year 10 in 2021, when they completed Year 10, the Stage 5, Year 9 and Year 10 course. Year 11 in 2022 is really like a dress rehearsal for the main event. The New South Wales system is actually very fair, because it gives in Year 11 the full experience of the HSC program, but it actually allows the students to reset at the start of Year 12 in terms of the marks and assessment results that they have achieved. The skills, the concepts, the understanding and the types of assessments have all been done very thoroughly by our teachers in Year 11. Mathematics is still at this point the subject that has up to 20 or 30% of content from Year 11 is assumed knowledge and may be re-examined in the Year 12 HSC, but for most, nearly all other courses, it restarts in Year 12 in terms of the content that is covered. So 2023 will be the milestone year for achieving the high school certificate, and then on to higher education, whether it's at university, college, TAFE, or in some other form of opportunity beyond. We're going to have a look now at the HSC and the ATAR, and I'm happy to answer any questions around this along the way. I think it's important to hold in mind that we're dealing with 2 regulatory authorities. The first is our New South Wales Regulatory Authority, NESA, New South Wales Education Standards Authority. They set the curriculum, they set the examinations, they pay for the exam centre to run at PLC Armidale, they staff the exam centre, and they pay for New South Wales teachers to mark the HSC. NESA will award the high school certificate. NESA do not regulate the ATAR. The ATAR is done, it is the tertiary achievement rank, the Australian tertiary achievement rank. It is regulated by the university sector, and it is regulated for the sole and express purpose of determining a rank order from the highest performing student to the lowest performing student in each state and territory, with a view to university entrance. So we have state-based authorities setting curriculum, assessing and marking, and then we have a university admission centre overseeing the process of determining the ATAR. But there are rules to make it a level playing field across all of the states and territories. There are rules, and then NESA has its own rules on top of that. So for the high school certificate courses for the HSC, the students have to complete at least 12 units of study in Year 11 and 10 units of study in Year 12. And you might have heard, I think Kate or Mitchell refer to students that might have discontinued and be carrying a 10-unit load in Year 12, having some assigned study time in the library under closer supervision. And there is actually a purpose behind that. As a school, we do not encourage students studying 10 units, with some exceptions. Exceptions would be students that have accelerated in a course. So they may already have completed, and there are some parents here whose daughters have accelerated in a course and completed the HSC this year, even though in one subject, and will complete the rest of their courses next year. So they may carry 10 units next year. We do have some students that might also be undertaking some TAFE courses and be looking at a vocational pathway. And so the 10 units is what they are able to manage with their time and with the requirements of their TAFE program as well to stay focused for their HSC. But why do we encourage 11 to 12 units as the minimum for most of our girls? Because when we analyse the results from year after year after year, we see that the students that are carrying a higher pattern of subjects are actually the students that also achieve higher academic results. And I think there's a couple of things happening here. One is that generally not all adolescents are brilliant at time management. And so when you are actually physically in a classroom and a teacher is helping mapping out the learning for you and your brain is actively engaged for the 7 or 8 periods in an academic mode of thinking and dialogue and discussion, there are a set of splinter skills that can be developed that map across to the other courses that you're studying. If you take that 8 periods away and a student is managing themselves independently, some will do that really well and others won't get the benefit of those splinter skills developing that actually support across other subject areas. So we have been encouraging the girls to hold to 11 units, and a number of this cohort have picked up extension subjects, and we're thrilled to be offering extension history and extension science for girls to study as well. So there are NESA rules, but then we've added our own caveat to that as well. In both 11 and 12, the girls have studied 4 subjects, 2 units of English, 6 board, which is NESA developed courses, and 3 courses of 2 or more units. And that's just an example of a pattern of subjects there that a particular student has chosen to do. But I'll move on, because really now coming back to understanding the difference between the HSC and the ATAR, it's not just the different regulatory authorities, but it's also how the ATAR works. Well, for a start, for the high school certificate, each subject that your daughter completes, she will receive 3 marks per course. So per subject, per course, there will be 3 marks that appear on her testament. She will have her HSC exam mark, she will have a HSC moderated assessment mark, and she will have a HSC mark, which is made up of 50% assessment, 50% exam. So the high school certificate doesn't actually have a single mark for each course. It records 3 marks, with the HSC mark being 50% of the assessment and exam. When we come to an ATAR, the ATAR is not and those marks are not capped on a bell curve distribution. So I tell the girls in Year 12 when I'm interviewing them that in my day when I did the HSC, there were a limit on the number of students that could achieve a mark over 90 in a single course. And so statistically, the HSC results themselves were scaled to get that bell curve distribution of 10% with a mark over 90, 20% with marks over 80, and so on. Back in 2000, it was decided that was not fair to recognise student input and achievement. And so the HSC program that is still in place today that your daughters will complete is still following the process that was established in 2001 of creating moderation within the examinations and assessments to allow students to achieve what they're capable of. So in other words, there's no cap on how many students may get a mark over 90 or a band 6 from a NESA perspective. Students are rewarded for the effort they put in. But when it comes to the ATAR, UAC are a little more brutal because they're looking for university entrance selection, and so they will create a rank from the highest performing student in each state and territory right down to the lowest performing student. So it is not a mark. So the highest ATAR that can be awarded is 99.99, and this year 50 students will be awarded an ATAR of 99.99. 50 students will be awarded an ATAR of 99.98. And so on, it goes down through. And understanding that ranking system and the limiting of each person on the rank, I demonstrate to the girls graphically by showing them what happens when you take a hill, which is the HSC where people can sit according to whatever they've achieved, and you have to flatten that to create a queue. You can't be pushed up in the queue, you'll be pushed down in the queue, but we'll come to that in a moment. I won't show you the graphic, but I'll talk you through it as well. So when the ATAR is calculated, the UAC rules for ATAR is that it will be the best 10 units of subject study. There again is why we encourage 11 or 12, because there might be just that one subject or that one exam that if your daughter's only carrying 10 units, every unit is going to count for an ATAR. But for 11 units, the best 10 will be calculated. The only proviso is that the 2 units of English must be included in that 10, and then 8 other best units. And then we also offer a Category B course, which is hospitality, and that students can only have one Category B course that is worth 2 units as well. So if we, to bring that to a summary, at New South Wales level, 50% of their high school certificate is the moderated assessment, 50% is based on the exam marks, NESA oversee the HSC, and then the ATAR, the rank, is determined by the University Admissions Centre. In the moderated assessment, I will talk through the process of moderation in a moment, but it's important to note that moderation is happening at an assessment level. When it comes to the exams, it's being aligned to standards. And we talk to the girls about what the course performance descriptors are. When your daughter brings home her first HSC assessment task, we actually start practicing this way back when the girls are in year 7, but from 11 and 12 we are using the course performance descriptors. So when they're receiving feedback in a written form around assessment tasks, your daughter will have a marking grid or a marking criteria that maps across to these performance descriptors that are used for the examinations to align to those bands of achievement. Scaling does not happen at the HSC level. It did before 2001, but since 2001, NESA does not scale at the HSC level. They moderate assessments, they align exams to the performance descriptors, the performance band descriptors. It is the University Admissions Centre that scale the results of the examinations that they have access to. So, and that's a bit of a misnomer that I'm constantly not correcting the girls, but just rephrasing their thinking around it, because if you go into the HSC trying to second guess the scaling for HSC purposes, you won't be able to do that. It recalibrates every year. So the girls need to understand the difference between moderation and alignment, which they have some control over because the expectations are clearly outlined, and scaling, which will be outside of their control. So that's just a summary of what I have spoken about. I'll talk to the, I'll keep going on with that one. Sorry, the slides are in a slightly different format to this evening. So let's look at the moderated assessment, what's actually happening there. NESA allow every school across the state to develop an assessment schedule, and that is what was given to the girls today. For each course, NESA will say that girls or students can only complete a maximum of 4 assessment tasks for a 2-unit course, with the proviso that English may have a 5th assessment, and a 1-unit course can have no more than 3 assessments. In the NESA rules around assessment, the students can actually only complete 1 assessment task that is like the higher school certificate assessment exam format. And so the trials are exactly that. That is the 1 assessment task that we are allowed to have the girls complete as a full assessment task. That is the closest experience they will have to the high school certificate. And we run our trial period exactly as the girls will go into the high school certificate, even bringing in our presiding officer, Lisa Quast, to run the first exam with the girls. So they're running their first trial exam with the person that will oversee all of their exams in the HSC, and Lisa goes through the exact exam rules and procedures as she will do for the high school certificate. In week 9 of term 1, there will be what we are calling non-assessable examinations for your girls. The girls will call them mock exams. We like to say non-assessable rather than mock, because we're not making fun of them. We're actually giving the girls as much experience as we can of performing under exam-like conditions. It won't be the full course that's assessed. It will only be the course to that point, and the marks don't count as part of the formal assessment. But we do run it for the girls for that experience of managing their time, managing an extended written response, looking at multiple choice style questions, looking at original source material, so that they learn through the experience of doing without having to think about any of the marks that go with that. And since we have moved to that approach, which was forced upon us with NESA changing some of their rules, and we are one of the few schools that continues the practice of non-assessable exam style, reduced exams in term 1, the girls take it very seriously. They will study, they will prepare, they will put themselves into the exam mode, and they benefit from the work that they put into that. So in creating this level playing field across the state with these rules about how many assessment tasks, when it comes to moderating, NESA have got to work out, okay, so how do we know that the assessment tasks that were done at PLC Armidale for, I'm just going to pick modern history, were of the same standard or calibre as Boggabri Central School or the Scots College or Coffs Harbour High. Each school that's offering the HSC will have a different way of doing the assessment tasks, and they're marked by the teachers in those schools who know those students. So what NESA do to create a level playing field is that they moderate the assessment by using the 1 assessment task that all students in the state do the same task at the same time, on the same day, marked by the same people, set in exactly the same conditions, which happens to be the higher school certificate exams. And so what you can see in that little table, and I apologise, it is small and hard to see, but what you can see here is a subject. This is just subject X. And the school has sent in this list of assessment marks. So after those 4 tasks were done for modern history, the school sent in marks ranging from 90 for student A, who we have ranked number 1, down to 40 for student F, who the school ranked as number 6. And that rank order is important, and NESA also take note of the relative difference between, so the degree of differential between the students A to F, and those things remain constant for the purpose of moderated assessment. And then come October, November, the examinations will be sat, and NESA will compare the PLC Armidale cohort modern history results with the school modern history results that were submitted at the end of September. And in this particular case, the modern history exam marks ranged from 92, which was the top mark, down to 50, which was the lowest mark of a PLC Armidale student. And note that that was student E who achieved the mark of 50, whereas the school assessed the student at 55. And it isn't uncommon to see variance if students have received an early entry of offer to a university and they then think, oh, well, I know where I'm going, I don't really need to put as much effort into the exams. And sometimes if students are not intending to go to university, they might take their foot off the pedal. And so we talk to the girls at different points along the HSC journey about the importance of staying true to themselves and staying true to what they're capable of without putting undue pressure on them as well. So then when NESA are looking at our exam marks, they're looking at the total marks achieved by the cohort and they're looking at the mean of those total marks. And that is going to stay the same when we come to the moderated assessment. The moderated assessment marks are derived by determining the highest and the lowest mark, and NESA does this automatically by saying the highest moderated assessment mark that will be given to a modern history student from PLC Armidale will be determined by that one common statewide assessment, which is the exam. So the highest moderated assessment mark a student in modern history can be given will be 92, the top mark one of our students achieved. The lowest moderated assessment mark that will be given to a student at PLC Armidale likewise will be determined by our lowest mark in that one common statewide assessment, the exam. So the lowest assessment mark will be given to a student and will be the mark of 50. And the marks in between, which are in bold on the screen, are not the same as the school assessment marks, apart from the, they're not the same as the school assessment marks, and they're not the same as the exam marks, apart from that top and bottom, those, the defining or the goalpost marks, as I call them to the girls. So where does the spread of marks in the middle come from? Well, what NESA do is they ensure that the total marks remain the same. So moderated assessment will also be a total of 409, and they determine that the mean will stay the same, and the mean happened to be 68, so that will remain constant. The rank order from our school assessment will remain constant. So it varies for the exams, but for the moderated assessment, it reflects our school assessment rank order. And the spread of marks in between is determined by looking at our girls' performance in the HSC examination, moderated by the degree of differential in the rank order that the school has supplied with the school assessment tasks. So the moderation process is of the examination marks, but it refers back, and it is in a mathematical formula referring back to the school's assessment of the students, ensuring that the rank order is preserved and the spread in between. And each year I explain to the girls that's the PLC Armidale cohort effect. That is what we see when girls say, if every girl, even the girl that is really struggling with their learning, just puts the effort in to be in class, to be on time, to do their work, to get feedback from their teacher, to encourage one another in their study sessions, if every girl is doing that and we improve the performance of our lowest student, we have automatically improved the lowest moderated assessment mark that can be given to a student in the school, irrespective of what their school assessment mark may have been. So it's a little bit complicated, but I just wanted to clarify that the moderated assessment is a moderation of a statewide common assessment task, the examinations, drawing back and referring back to the data that the school has provided of our assessment and rank order and the degree of differential. If there is a huge discrepancy between what the school assesses a student at and the actual exam performance, NESA may ask us to explain, why is that so? Why have we suddenly seen such a big drop or such a big improve in an individual student? And likewise, if there is a student who is performing in the bottom section for the school's marks that is quite a degree lower than the rest of the cohort. And that is true if we have girls with additional needs that may not actually do academically, may not perform well. And our task as a school is to ensure that we have assessed accurately and fairly, and that we have put the appropriate spread and distribution in the marks in. But likewise, if there is such a big gap between the lower marked students or ranked students in our school assessment, NESA will count that as an outlier, and they won't take that into account for the moderated assessment. They will take to the next band up. So in my analysis of NESA's processes, and this is my 15th year as a principal analysing HSC results, and comparing that to colleagues in other states and territories, it is a very transparent and fair and supportive process, even though it does carry the spectre of that external set of examinations, but we balance it by looking at the marathon metaphor along the way. And so in this particular student's case, or of the HSC awarding of the results for modern history, the final HSC mark will be determined by 50% of the HSC exam result, 50% of the moderated assessment result to derive the final HSC mark for that particular subject. And I'm happy to clarify that with anyone later if you have got any questions you would like to ask around that. I'll move on quickly now to look at the ATAR, and this is where scaling does come into play. And there is a very intentional purpose of scaling, and that is because the University Admission Centre has looked at the some 150 or odd courses that are offered in the New South Wales High School Certificate suite of subjects, and have determined that some courses lend themselves more to university entrance than others. And so they want to make sure students will be rewarded at the HSC level for their attainment within those particular courses. But when it comes to the university admission process, the universities are looking at the courses that lend themselves to university entrance of a particular subject level. And so what the scaling that ATAR apply, or the UAC apply, is to minimise the effect of performance due to the subjects that students have actually completed, according to the level of difficulty within the subject. So I'll show you the example of student A and student B, and it might be a bit hard to read, so I will read that out. So student A studied English, Mathematics Advanced, Chemistry, Modern History, Mathematics Extension 2, and Community and Family Studies. And I took the last two subjects from the 2021 analysis of HSC results. Student B studied English, Mathematics Advanced, Chemistry, Modern History. They did not study Mathematics Extension 2, they studied Community and Family Studies. Sorry, I said student A studied CAFS, but they didn't. Student A studied Mathematics Extension 2 and student B studied CAFS. Student A was awarded 95 as their HSC scaled mark for English, Mathematics, Chemistry, Modern History. When it came to Maths Extension 2, student A's mark was 77, but UAC scaled that mark to 85. So that is actually taken from the 2021 scaling report. Student B studied the same subjects and achieved a lower result of 60, but they studied the subject of CAFS and their HSC result was 87, but the UAC scaling process in 2021 scaled a HSC result of 87 in CAFS back to 68, because it was determined that the level of difficulty of CAFS was such, Community and Family Studies as a subject was such, that that was a more accurate reflection of how it would map to university entrance demand requirements. CAFS is a good subject, and there are students that achieved ATARs of 99.99 that studied CAFS as a subject. So I'm not being discriminatory around a particular subject there, Likewise, there are students that studied Maths Extension 2 that did not get an ATAR of 99.99. So the subject you study doesn't guarantee the ATAR that you achieve, but what UAC are wanting to do is to reflect the relative difference in the rigour of individual courses as they are scaling, because the ATAR is the rank. An ATAR of 90 or above is representing the top 10% of the student population, and an ATAR of 70 is the top 30% of the student population, and the average ATAR in 2021 was 68. Marks, HSC marks in the 70s were scaled across to ATARs that were roughly around the 56 to 58, depending on the individual subjects. HSC marks of subjects in the 80s were mapping across to ATARs from about 78 to 82, again, depending on the pattern of subjects. So it is really important that the girls recognise that their success and their achievement will not be determined by their ATAR. It's just that that's what the media has grabbed because it's a single figure, and it makes it much easier to do comparative tables with a single figure than to look at the HSC and look at the subjects and look at a moderated assessment and exam and then HSC mark. So we encourage the girls to see their success is in their pattern of subjects at a HSC level, but I do in term 3, and I don't do it before term 3 because it doesn't really make a lot of sense until after the girls have pretty much finished their trials. And then once their assessment tasks are out of the way, that's when I will sit with the girls individually or in groups of 2 and go through some of this for them. And the whole purpose of that is to say, okay, we're over Heartbreak Hill, we're now in the sprint phase, we're now focusing on preparing for exams because the assessment tasks are out of the way. And the girls respond really very positively to things being broken down and presented to them in that way. So this just really summarises what I've said to this point. And I'll hand back now to Mr. Clendenning, but I'm very happy to answer any questions about the HSC ATAR assessment scaling after Mr. Clendenning's presentation. Thanks, Mitchell.
Okay, so there's just 2 more items before we have a short Q&A, and the first one is just about careers. Mrs. Taylor did mention this briefly when introducing the role that Ms. Chu has within the senior school. But perhaps, I'm not sure where your daughter is along her journey in considering careers. Here at PLC, we start that process in a bit more of a formal way in Year 10 with the Moresby testing that they did and discussions with their pastoral care teachers in regards to the outcome of doing that as a way of exploring their interests and passions. But of course these change. It'd be interesting if you have those conversations whether there's been some consistency in career ambitions between Year 10 and Year 11 or Year 12, but I would expect change as part of that. So it's important for us that we keep their minds open and let them see a number of different options that are available to them. And there's a number of ways that we do that. So within pastoral care sessions, some are dedicated specifically to careers, and as part of that they will look at different universities and what they offer and the way that you can go about applying, and through that they get to see a number of different courses that perhaps they didn't even know existed, and the sort of criteria that universities are looking for. But then also we're looking to take them to careers fairs as well as have guest speakers, and we've also had this year a number of residential experiences that sometimes are all paid for, like from Sydney University. I know that some did that over the holiday break, in fact. And so these are all different ways that we can, I guess, expose them to the range of options that are out there as they are considering a career post-school. But there's many that get right to the end and still don't know. But it's important that we're not panicking, that they don't know what they want to be, because as we know, their careers are likely to change multiple times. But we just want to give them clear information, and we can always help them when they've got very specific questions, particularly, I guess, where Armidale is located. How do you apply for a Queensland university? Comes up every year. So we're a good touch point for that about how they can go apply for UQ, for instance. And something I wanted to add tonight was some top tips for parents from a parent, not from me, but this is from a Year 12 parent who's now at the end of her journey, fortunately, having 2 PLC girls go through. And so these were her top tips. Having a fridge full of healthy food. Do you have that? Have the kettle ready at all times to have a cuppa and a chat, or have a phone conversation if you're a boarder. I like this one. Don't give too much advice. I'm still in that phase because they just maybe want to vent and not always want our guidance or advice, even though we want to give it desperately. A separate space in the house to study if possible, not the same room they sleep in. That is, if that is possible, I think that is great advice to have that separation, and psychologists talk about that too as being important. Number 4, maybe you've experienced this already, about putting up with mess all over the house, including the dining table might be taken over for the year. Allowing that, I think, is great advice too. Exercise and lots of sleep, prioritising that and making home their happy place as much as you can. And don't take on their stresses as much as you can. They can feel that, and that does not always help them. I just also wanted to mention in closing before Q&A that our school psychologist and one of her partners in her psychology practice is offering a mental skills workshop, and it's being hosted at PLC, so that's in February. So that's not about skills relating to study and particular subjects, it's mental health strategies and skills specifically tailored to that final year of Year 12. So if that's something that you're interested in, there are flyers out there with tea and coffee. So I think we're right now to move to any questions that you may have, and so Mrs. Taylor and I are available to answer those should you have any now. I don't know if I'm happy about that or nervous. Yes.
Yes, so the HSC is on the certificate for each subject, there will be 3 marks. Moderated assessment, exam, and then the final HSC mark per subject, whereas the ATAR is a rank, and so it will be a 4-digit rank. It will be 2 digits for the second.
So the HSC doesn't try to get to a single number?
No, not as it did in the old days. You can equate it back. I think in one of those slides it equated it back to a 9 out of 500. So you can equate it back to that, but that's not how it's referred to. So when I did my HSC back in the day, it was a mark out of 500 that you were given, yes, whereas it's moved away from that, yes. Whereas the ATAR is still the rank to 2 decimal places.
So if you're applying for an overseas university,
Yes.
and the ATAR wouldn't go off into participants anyway, would they use the HSC?
So New South Wales, of the Australian exit credentials, New South Wales is one of the few that is actually recognised for direct entry to overseas universities in the UK and in America. And we've had girls go from here to France to study. So the rigour of the New South Wales HSC is one of its strengths. NESA are very protective around their high school certificate and who can actually run it and offer it. And it is one of the new Australian exit credentials with that direct entry pathway to the UK and US. But it is the HSC, not ATAR. Yes. Yes.
If the ATAR is Australian Tertiary Academic Rank,
Admission rank. Admissions rank.
admission rank, how does that compare to the other states?
That's it. Yes, that's a great question.
I mean, if it's an Australia, it's got the word Australia
Yes.
right in it, but it's only New South Wales.
No, the ATAR is not just New South Wales. It's calibrated for each state and territory according to their exit credential.
How does
But-
the admissions of, say, University of Melbourne compare an ATAR of 90 from a New South Wales student with an ATAR of 90 from a South Australian student?
That's a very good question. And that is exactly what happens at the University Admission Centre, is that they look at the comparative rigour in each state and territory of the courses and put it into a mathematical equation of determining the correlation between New South Wales chemistry and VCE chemistry. Because in VCE, in Victoria, for example, there are courses offered in Victoria that we don't offer in New South Wales. There are courses offered in Western Australia that are not offered in Victoria. It's so, and I've had the opportunity recently of trying to explain the New South Wales High School Certificate overseas, and it is really hard to say we actually don't have one Australian exit credential. We have exit credentials from all our states and territories because it does not make sense in a country with 27 million people that we have 7 or 8 different exit credentials. But the University Admission Centre have worked out a model of correlating the performance across the states and territories for the purpose of university admission. But it is based on, so our girls' ATARs will be based on the New South Wales results. Yeah. Yeah. It is confusing.
And then as an American, I wonder, how does all that correlate to SAT test results?
Yes, I don't. So there is a correlation, because I know when we have overseas international students that are looking to study in Australian universities, there is a correlation that's done at the university entrance level between credentials from overseas coming in, and that's the same as the New South Wales Higher School Certificate in the UK and the US. Yeah. But no, I'm not the university. We have got people from the university here. They might be able to answer that question more exactly than me. Are there any other questions that you would like to ask? Well, as they come up, please don't sit on it, because there's no such thing as a silly question when it comes to the HSC. And if this is your first child going through, it's really good to be able to just have some of those questions asked in your own mind, because that's great advice about listening, but sometimes we actually also need to help our girls regain perspective, and having a little bit of information about that can help put things back into perspective is important too. One of the things that, just following up from the advertisement about the workshop that Penny Kempton and Marnie Heitbrink are running in early next year, is that we will also make available to the girls information about some study skills opportunities that are held in Sydney. They are workshops that are conducted in the July school holidays and in the October school holidays as well. They are run by for-profit companies that are looking at just preparing students for examinations. But, and I know I've had all of my children, my own children, go to them, and I have recommended them to girls here that have come back and said they have found it very helpful. So we will make that information available to your girls as well. And I know in the last holidays there was a group of 5 girls that went to Sydney, and they took turns between a couple of parents to just organise the transport and the supervision, and the girls signed up and did full-day workshops. So they're run at Sydney University, University of Technology, Macquarie University, University of New South Wales, and they bring together curriculum writers, examination markers, and teachers in very high-performing schools to run the workshops entirely focused on exam preparation. It's not content, it's not learning material, it does not undermine anything that is done at a school level. In fact, it supports it, because sometimes just hearing a different person, a different voice, and being in a room, you know, with 200 other students that are going through the same thing you're going through from different schools can actually just help messages stick. So we don't make that a compulsory thing. We don't organise it as a school activity because it is in the non-term time. However, I would highly recommend it for your girls if they were interested to be able to do that. And some of them have been offered in the past online, but the face-to-face and in that lecture-style theatre is definitely a really good experience for the girls to have. So thank you for coming this evening. It's really encouraging to have you here at the start of the HSC journey with your daughters, and we look forward to ongoing points of connecting and conversing with you across this marathon journey ahead. Put your running shoes on. Enjoy your evening. Thanks, everyone.